Welcome to our special series, I Care, I Volunteer on Rogers TV. I'm your host, Alima Hotaki. Working in the shadows are many volunteers and organizations that help enrich the societies we live in. Later in the show, we'll meet guests who have dedicated their time to serve others. But to start things off, I'm joined by Corinne Strong, the Executive Director of Volunteer MBC, and Eugene Wilson, the Development Programmer for the City of Brampton's Recreational Division and Community Services. And of course, to our viewers, you can also follow us online on social media, on Twitter, Volunteer MBC, as well as like Volunteer MBC. So welcome to the show. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So let's, as usual, start things off with, tell us a little bit about Volunteer MBC.
Okay, so Volunteer MBC is the volunteer center for the region of Peel. We serve the entire region of Peel community, and last year we referred approximately 30,000 volunteers to community service organizations. So we promote and support volunteerism in order to connect volunteers to meaningful volunteer opportunities.
And what are some of the core services that you provide?
So we provide a matching service, so volunteers can actually go online to search for opportunities, or they can come into our offices, and we have offices in Brampton, Mississauga, and in Caledon, and they can come in for a one-on-one referral matching service if they're not comfortable in going online.
And this is actually a very interesting partnership because we have Volunteer MBC with the City of Brampton. And when people usually think of government, they often don't think that there are any sort of volunteer opportunities available. So Eugene, can you tell us a little bit about the sort of opportunities that are available at the City of Brampton?
Absolutely. Me working in the recreation department, we have a ton of recreation facilities and neighborhood and special events that take place in the city throughout the course of the year, for which we utilize volunteers in a wide variety of different areas. So anything from skating programs, youth programs, sports programs, helping out at our seniors recreational center, a lot of different areas that youth and adults, seniors, anyone can get involved in.
No, very interesting. Because I remember when I was back in school or so, and I really heard about the city offering this sort of service. So how does the City of Brampton go about in terms of spreading awareness about the opportunities and the volunteer roles that it offers?
So obviously through our partnership through Volunteer MBC, we certainly utilize them as to the opportunities that are available. What you can potentially get out of it as far as benefits are concerned, whether it be networking, building experience, and working with our fellow staff as far as potentially getting leadership abilities, and finding out where you are as far as what you want to do potentially career-wise, and seeing if it's a great fit or not working in recreation.
And we talked about this often, and it's often described Volunteer MBC as a matchmaking service. Mm-hmm. But what really makes Volunteer MBC so different, so unique compared to other organizations?
So I think what we offer is a one-stop shop. You come to us and you don't have to go to all these organizations across the region of Peel to find out what your opportunities are that you want to, where you want to volunteer. So I think we're very unique in that. We also work with corporations as well for group volunteer opportunities, but we also want to make sure that we have organizations that are members that are ready to receive volunteers. So it's one thing to say for us, you need to volunteer and it'll be a wonderful experience, but then we have to help the organizations to make sure that they have youth opportunities available that are meaningful. So we provide a lot of education as well to our member organizations.
And going back to the City of Brampton, what sort of roles are available to I know you talked about that you have something for everyone, for seniors, for students, but what are some of the more specifics, the particular roles that the city has to offer?
Well, as far as roles are concerned, anything from administration, learning about how a particular, how a special event or neighborhood event runs, even taking part as far as the planning process is concerned. We've had a lot of events, especially in the past couple of years, for which there were large-scale events. More specifically, they were the 55-plus senior games in 2012, as well as the girls softball championships, world softball championships here in Brampton, and we had hundreds of volunteers take part in a variety of different areas and in part of the process. And without volunteers, these events wouldn't have been successful. So
that's really interesting that you talk about, like, you recognize volunteers because for what they are. And there was even in 2013 a TD economics study that said that volunteering creates $50 billion in annual economic value for Canadians. So this is actually that we've been able to, as a society, tap into a source that's been of so much use to us. So that said, and both of you have worked with volunteers firsthand, can you even imagine a world without volunteers?
No, absolutely not. Definitely not. You know, we often say at the center, volunteers, talking about the economic value that volunteers bring, you know, volunteers they don't get paid, but they're not worthless. They're definitely priceless. And, you know, if you can imagine a world without somebody going to a senior's home, helping a senior, without mentors that are available for the different programming, you know, parades and city functions, city events, without volunteers, you can just not imagine that what it would be like. In fact, almost half of the organizations in the region of Peel are run entirely by volunteers.
Wow.
And there are so many organizations, nonprofit organizations, so we need to recognize them.
Completely agree. Yeah. So is it fair to say, Eugene, that society in a way might collapse without volunteers, or is that stretching it?
Well, yeah. Just to echo on Corinne's comments, I can't imagine a world without volunteers as well. They are so vital to the success of our economy, especially, you know, and I always tell volunteers that volunteering is the foundation of employment. It's building experience. It's finding out who you are as a person, what you're capable of, and what you may or may not want to do career-wise. And it's certainly a driving force. These are, you know, especially with youth, they are the leaders of tomorrow and the driving force in our economy as we move forward.
Yeah, and it's definitely a very mutually beneficial relationship where the giver gets something out of it and those receiving as well. So just, I guess, if you can just tell me, for you, what is the biggest impact, if you had one or two impacts, the two of you, really quickly?
On the volunteer? Or
volunteers have on society.
Okay, so I think that volunteers, when it comes to society, again, you cannot imagine anything really happening without there being a huge cost associated if you had to run these events without volunteers or any of the social services that we offer. So many people, so many clients get helped by volunteers, but you're right, it is a win-win. It's also definitely a win for the volunteer. They get just as much out of it as the clients receive on the receiving end.
And for you, Eugene?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Corinne said, volunteers are essential to what we do in recreation and in the city of Brampton, especially. And just moving forward, volunteers, I guess, have access to a number of different opportunities out there to get involved and you know, just become...
Sorry, we're out of time, but thank you so much. Lovely conversation. Wish I could continue, but thanks for joining us, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to I Care, I Volunteer. Joining me now from Caledon Parent-Child Centre are Shelley Sargent, the Manager of Community Relations and Volunteers, as well as two volunteers, Megan Roy O'Brien and Lorraine McGrath Marks. Welcome to the show, girls.
Thank you very much.
So let's start off with the Caledon Parent-Child Centre. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Sure. The Caledon Parent-Child Centre has been in Caledon for 27 years now.
Wow.
We started out as a little toy lending library back at in our humble beginnings, and we've just grown and grown over the years. We now have a permanent site in Bolton where families can come and access programs. They can do parent enrichment. They can do drop-off where they come in with their children and spend some time at the center. And we also have 7 rural locations throughout Caledon where we take our van and do van stops and bring our resources and our programs to the communities in the outlying areas as well.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm glad you touched upon that, the van service. How does that work? Do you drop off at, does the van go to a specific house or community center?
We have designated spots throughout the community in different villages, because I don't know if you know the community of Caledon, but it is a community of communities. There are a whole bunch of different little villages, and they're all come together to become Caledon. And so what we've done is we've isolated areas where there's a need for our programs and services, and we go and we rent a spot in that community. For instance, the library has been great to help us out, some of the churches in some of the communities, and so we go for a couple of hours at a time every week to each of these locations and provide our services there.
Oh, lovely. Well, the Caledon Parent-Child Centre, I have here 2 amazing volunteers.
Wonderful.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved? Go ahead.
I got involved 3.5 years ago. We're having a little bit of an unhappy time in our family, and I wanted to do something happy. And so I get a big charge out of little people. I find them very amusing. And so I got in touch with the Parent-Child Centre and to see if I could be a volunteer there.
And how about you?
I moved here from Calgary, and after we settled in, I was looking for something to get involved in, and the Caledon Parent-Child Centre was a natural fit with my parenting education and adult education background. So, same as Lorraine, I got involved, and I've been on the board for 4 years now.
Wow. Did you feel like when you started volunteering with them that you actually learned things that you never knew before?
Well, I certainly learned a lot about my community that I didn't know before. But again, my background was something very similar to this in Calgary, so it felt like coming home.
And when you talk about you learned something new about your community, can you just expand on that a bit?
Well, as Shelley mentioned, Caledon is a town of villages, and getting to know the different van stops in the different villages, and just even some of our sponsors and funders, their access through the town of Caledon. So just getting to know what's available and becoming more familiar with it. Certainly from somebody coming from Alberta to Ontario for the first time, it was very welcoming.
And why is it important to have these sort of programs in the community?
Oh, well, I can tell you that because when I was home with little ones, the centre hadn't been started yet, and it can be very isolating to be home with small children as much as you want to be. It's a little bit of overload sometimes, and so going to the centre, you have the opportunity not only for your children to have a lovely time, but you can chat with staff, you can chat with other. It can be mothers, fathers, grandparents, nannies, all kinds of other caregivers who are there. And also, if you have a concern about your child, it's a wonderful spot for resources to find out a referral to whatever your concern is, whatever kind of specialist. And some of these folks come in several times a year, these specialists, and can assess your children. So there's all kinds of resources available, as well as just having a place to go with little ones.
And it's very interesting because we talk about Caledon and the rural area compared to the city. Why are these sort of like your organization? Why is there like a need for it in rural areas compared to, for example, in cities?
I think there's a need for it everywhere, and I think that that's why it's so important that we do make that effort to get out into the various communities, and it's why our volunteers are so important as well, because it helps us, you know, go that little bit farther. But any mom or dad or caregiver who's working in isolation and trying to raise a child and doesn't have people around them. I mean, you know the old saying, it takes a village. Well, it really does take a village, and so what we are is that opportunity for them to come and get them out among their peers, to access services that they may not have access to within their own small community. We're able to give the kids a new place to play, you know, toys that are different and things like that. We're able to do parent enrichment pieces where the parents can learn everything from how to deal with tantrums to why am I so sad, and are there resources that are going to help me deal with that. Like, we have a program called Adjustments After Birth that meets weekly throughout the year, and that's exactly what it's for, is to help those parents who are struggling with, you know.
And I think you raised a very important issue, that it almost takes an entire town or community to raise a child, because, and I'm sure you two, the two of you know this better than anyone, or the three of you, is that you can even see it in a child's developmental skills and language skills, that often the ones with more siblings, who have a lot more cousins, just a lot more social, they often develop language skills a lot faster than kids, like you said, as, you know, that often, you know, like live more in isolation. But I also think what's really amazing, and what I think is so timely in today's society, is the problem that women have after giving birth, the postpartum. And I know your organization offers services for that. Can you just kind of a little bit touch upon that, because that's very important?
Sure. Well, we do, not just for women who are dealing with postpartum issues, but also with families that are dealing with children who have special needs, everything from the autism spectrum to Downs, to children with hearing difficulties. Those parents are often dealing with a situation where they've got more on their plate than a typical parent would, and so we're able to provide programming once a week, like I said, for the moms who have postpartum issues. On Tuesday mornings, I believe right now, we do a program every week, and then on Tuesday afternoons we do a program for those parents that are raising children with special needs, and we get them in there, and we pull the kids out for the special needs program, which is called Let's Get Together. Pull the kids out, and our volunteers and our staff look after the kids while the parents get that opportunity. They go off by themselves and they learn things about what resources are available in the community for them and things like that. For the postpartum, it's a very private thing, and we are able to take them and put them in an environment with someone who knows what they're dealing with a core group of people in the community who are dealing with the same things that they're dealing with, and provide them with support, and you know,
makes it probably a lot easier for women to come forward as well, where you're no longer shamed about it, or we're like, this is all in your head, because that was most often the case. And really quickly, just in 10 seconds, how can people get involved with your organization?
Well, we would really love if they just give us a call. Our number is 905-857-0090. Go on the website and check it out. It's www.cp-cc.org, and the information is there on how to get involved with us.
Okay, great, and thank you for coming. And if you'd like to have more information about all the organizations on the show, you can visit the Volunteer MBC website. We'll be back right after the break. Welcome back to I Care, I Volunteer. Joining me for the last segment of the show, David Seabaron, the Executive Director of Seva Food Bank, as well as Navneet Madar and Preet Daliwal. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start off with actually the name of your organization, Seva. What does it mean?
So Seva is a term from the South Asian community dialect, which means selfless giving. So the premise of the work that we do really is based from this idea and this philosophy of giving back selflessly, where the act of the work that you've done is the gift itself.
And that is mainly rooted in Sikh culture or in Sikh religion?
It's rooted in all cultures of the world have this this idea of giving back selflessly. I don't think there's any denomination or any faith that does not have that. However, the term itself is born out of Sanskrit and born from that part of the world.
Oh, great. And how did the two of you get involved with the food bank?
Well, I got involved almost 2 years ago because actually one of the board members is a very close family friend of ours. Her name's Angie Wehal. She used to post a lot about the organization on social media, and it looked like she was having a lot of fun, and I asked her about it, and I asked her I wanted to get involved, and she told me what it was, and she gave me information how to get involved and where to go for training, and since then I've been involved, and I got all my family involved and cousins, and now my parents know about it. So, yeah.
And with you?
And for me, basically, she took me one day with her, and I've been there since, yeah.
Well, talk about positive influence. There you go. And actually, it's really interesting because they have actually on the news lately been saying that in the past few years, there's been a rise in the use of food banks. What do you think might be contributing to this?
The rise in food bank usage, 20% or so rise, I believe, in the compared to last year. And I think there's a variety of factors that bring people to food banks. In our context in particular, we live so closely to the airport that immigration really is one of the factors driving people using the food bank. But in addition to that, there's also complex issues. With immigration comes a lot of our clients who are unable to secure work themselves. Or the idea of this world that's paved in gold that's known as Canada isn't paved in gold, but rather the reality is that a lot of our very skilled workers that are being brought in from all over the world, their credentials are not being recognized in Canada, so they end up having to use food banks. So we always say this, that the food bank that the people that we serve are engineers and doctors and lawyers and some of the most intelligent people that you can possibly imagine. We have more doctors per capita at our food bank than I would say most organizations do. So, you know, it is really a symptom of what social issues exist, all the barriers that are out there, and really systemic issues that exist as well.
Wow, there's a lot of great points you touched upon. And for the two of you, when you started volunteering at the Seva Food Bank, what, for example, shocked you or surprised you the most? Because we often have this, when we think of food banks, it conjures up this image of usually homeless people, for example, or people with certain type of issues or so. What was the most surprising aspect when the two of you started volunteering?
For me, I think it was just the diversity of the people and the amount of people that showed up to actually get food, and like they really need it. I took it for granted every morning or every day going home, having food on my table. I didn't see how much people struggled to actually put food on their tables, and that it's just not one race or one person. And some of the clients that you talk to, one of the clients recently last week came in with his daughters because they're refugees from a country. He's actually a doctor back home, yet he's at a food bank because he came to Canada to help his family.
Yeah, and for you?
Yeah, similar reasons, similar things that I noticed too, that there's a lot of intelligent people there, and then they're just having tough times and they need the help to get back on their feet. And hopefully we're providing that, and to a point where they don't need us anymore.
And I think that's so important because you touched upon it so beautifully. I remember actually back in university, I very briefly volunteered at a food bank, and I was really surprised because the people that I saw, they were college students. You had university students, and a lot of times I actually am the kind of person, like, I'll start talking to people, and I asked a few people there, and some of the women and parents were like, well, we only have enough money, for example, to put food on the table twice a day, but not 3 times a day. So they just come there for that one meal. And I guess in an ideal society, we wouldn't, like, food banks are really just treating the symptoms of a larger issue. But for you, for example, what do you feel like should be done in terms of, like, do you feel like the government should take a greater role
I think just solving all those issues are a huge thing. We can't just eradicate poverty and eradicate all of the symptoms of poverty as well. So it comes with what I think really needs to happen is a lot more advocacy, a lot more focus on the core issues that put people at risk of poverty and the symptoms of poverty. So food banks will continue to exist, unfortunately. What we're seeing on our end is every time that we do any work, we're seeing anywhere from 5 to 10 new families per shift. So the numbers are indicating really what the national theme is. However, whether or not there is an easy solution, unfortunately, no. There's no amount of dollars that the government can throw at this issue that will deal with systemic racism, systemic, all of the isms or IAs that exist, because these are things that people are facing on a daily basis, and we speak to them and we're seeing how all of these barriers really prevent them from actualizing their full potential and really preventing them from living the Canadian dream.
Exactly. And what are some of your roles at the food bank?
Yeah, so we're both senior volunteers at the food bank, and what we do is basically whatever's needed that day. So if it's helping get the food already, or interacting with clients, or taking them through picking their groceries with them. So we just help wherever we're needed, and that's very enjoyable because we're never doing the same thing.
And what makes volunteering at the Seva food bank so different?
Honestly, every week I look forward to going to food bank, and that's why I've been there for 2 years. And like, I plan to be there for as long as I can, because it's the atmosphere and the people. It's not like just a group of volunteers, it's a family. When you go in there, it just brightens up your day, and then the little effort that you put in to go help these clients just puts a smile on their face. Even carrying the grocery bags to their car makes their day and brings a smile to their face, and that's what's the most rewarding thing, because they're so grateful for the little bit of help you're giving, and everyone's volunteering their time. Most of us are volunteers, or very few are paid. So everyone who's there wants to be there.
And how has it changed the two of you in terms of the way you look at society?
Well, it just it makes me want to give back more, because like I'm very fortunate. Like I always have food on the table, always have a roof over my head, and it just feels good to give back and not just sit home, play video games all the time like I used to.
Really quickly, in 10 seconds, if you can just let our viewers know how they could possibly get involved with the food bank.
Perfect. So getting involved with the food bank is critical. Volunteers are the heartbeat of the organization. We cannot exist without them. So, please get a hold of us, www.sevafoodbank.com or volunteer@sevafoodbank.com for more information.
Well, thank you so much for coming, because you've just enriched me with all that information. So thank you so much. And as this is the last episode of this season of I Care, I Volunteer, on behalf of Volunteer MBC, I would like to thank all the guests and partner organizations that took the time to come on the show, as well as all the Rogers TV volunteers on crew. Finally, I would like to thank you, the viewer, and we hope that I Care, I Volunteer has encouraged and inspired you to volunteer. Until next time, goodbye.